My name is Princess Sabrina, and what I'm about to tell you, most people think it's impossible. Some call it a miracle. Others whisper that it was something darker, something ancient that should have stayed buried in the desert sands. I was born into wealth most people can't imagine. Golden palaces, servants attending to my every need, diamonds that cost more than small countries. But none of that prepared me for the day my own blood turned against me, left me to die in the most horrific way possible, and witnessed something that changed everything I thought I knew about this world. This is my story. Every word of it is true, even the parts that shouldn't be. Before I tell you what happened in that desert, before I explain the bees and what came after, you need to understand who I was. Because the Princess Sabrina who walked into that desert is not the same woman speaking to you now. Part 1. The Golden Cage. 2, not 8. I grew up in Riyadh, in a palace that most tourists will never see. My father was a prince, connected to the royal family through bloodlines that stretched back centuries. My mother was his third wife, a woman of extraordinary beauty but little power in the hierarchy of our household. From the moment I could walk, I was taught that appearances were everything. How you presented yourself to the world mattered more than who you truly were. I learned to smile at gatherings while my heart felt nothing. I learned to bow my head in respect while my mind screamed for freedom. But I was also educated, unlike many women of my generation in our circle. My father, surprisingly progressive in some ways, believed his daughters should know the world, even if we could never fully participate in it. I studied literature, history, languages. I spoke 5 languages fluently by the time I was 16: English, Arabic, French, Italian, and Urdu. I read books that opened windows to lives I would never live. I dreamed of universities in London and Paris, of walking through museums alone, of having coffee in small cafes where no one knew my name or my family. Those dreams were foolish. I see that now. When I turned 22, my father announced my engagement to Prince Abdullah, a distant cousin I had met exactly 3 times. He was 47 years old, already had 2 wives, and looked at me the way men look at racehorses they're considering purchasing. I remember the night he told me. We were in his study, surrounded by leather-bound books he never read, and artifacts from empires that had turned to dust. "Sabrina," he said, not looking up from his paperwork, "you will marry Abdullah in 6 months. The contracts are being drawn up." Not a question, not a discussion, a decree. "Father, I don't love him. I barely know him." He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "Love? You've been reading too many Western novels. This marriage secures our family's position. Your feelings are irrelevant." That night, I made a decision that would lead me to the bees, to the desert, to everything that came after. I decided to run. For 3 months, I planned in secret. I had money my mother had given me over the years, jewelry I could sell. I had a friend, Layla, who worked in the palace but dreamed of escape just as I did. Together we crafted a plan. We would leave during the wedding preparations, when the palace was in chaos. Layla had a brother who worked at the airport. He could get us through security, onto a plane to London. From there, we would disappear into the millions of people who lived there, just 2 more foreign women in a vast city. I trusted Layla completely. We had grown up together, shared secrets, cried together when her mother died, and when my brother married a woman who treated me with cruelty. But I also told someone else. This was my fatal mistake, the one decision that haunts me still. I told my younger brother, Rashid. Rashid was 20, rebellious, always talking about reform and change. He seemed to understand me in ways my other siblings didn't. When I told him I was leaving, that I couldn't marry Abdullah, I expected him to help me. Instead, he looked at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before. Fear, yes, but also calculation. "Sabrina, if you do this, You'll destroy our family's honor. Father will never recover. I can't live like this, Rashid. I'll die inside. He hugged me that night, told me he understood, said he would pray for me. 3 days before my planned escape, I was summoned to my father's study. When I walked in, my father was there. My uncle Khalid was there. My eldest brother was there. And Abdullah was there, sitting in my father's chair like he already owned it. My father's face was stone. You planned to run away, to bring shame upon this family, to destroy the alliance we have built. My blood turned to ice. Father, Rashid told us everything. He gestured, and my brother stepped from the shadows. He wouldn't meet my eyes. In that moment, I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, but something deeper. Trust, perhaps. The belief that blood meant something, that family protected family. You leave us no choice, my uncle Khalid said. His voice was soft, which made it more terrifying. A woman who would betray her family cannot be trusted. You must be taught a lesson. I expected to be locked away, perhaps beaten. What I didn't expect was what my uncle said next. In the old days, traders were taken to the desert, left to the sun and the sand. Sometimes they were left near the wild bee colonies, the ones that nest in the abandoned wells. The bees would do what needed to be done. My father closed his eyes. For a moment, I thought he would stop this madness. But he said nothing. Abdullah smiled. They took me at dawn. No one in the palace was allowed to speak to me or say goodbye. Layla was dismissed from service, sent away to prevent her from interfering. My hands were bound. They put me in a SUV with tinted windows and drove for 3 hours into the desert, far from the city, far from anyone who might ask questions. The Arabian desert is beautiful in photographs. In reality, it's merciless. The sun doesn't just heat the air, it turns everything into an oven. The sand reflects the light until you feel like you're being cooked from all directions at once. They stopped near a cluster of ruined buildings, the remains of an old settlement abandoned decades ago. And there, in the ground, were the wells. Dried up, useless for water, but perfect nesting grounds for the wild bees that have lived in these deserts for thousands of years. My uncle Khalid explained it to me, his voice still terrifyingly soft. These bees are not like the ones in the West. They are aggressive, territorial. When disturbed, they attack in swarms of thousands. Their venom causes paralysis, then organ failure. It is a painful way to die, Sabrina, but it is what traitors deserve. They chained me to a metal post near the largest well. The chain was long enough that I could move, but not long enough to escape the area where the bees nested. My brother Rashid was there. He finally looked at me. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but you left me no choice. If I had helped you, they would have punished me too." "You chose your comfort over my life," I said. "That's not love, Rashid. That's cowardice." He flinched like I had struck him, but he didn't stop them. They left me a single bottle of water, enough to keep me alive for perhaps a day in that heat. Then they drove away, their vehicles disappearing into the shimmering horizon until I was completely, utterly alone. The first few hours, I cried. I screamed until my voice was raw. I pulled at the chains until my wrists bled. But the metal held, and no one came. As the sun climbed higher, I heard it, a low humming sound coming from the wells. The bees beginning their day. I knew I had two choices: die slowly from heat and thirst, or disturb the bees and die quickly, but in agony. I chose neither. Instead, I did something I had never done in my privileged life. I prayed. Not the formal prayers I had been taught, but something raw and desperate. I prayed to God, to the universe, to whatever force might be listening. If I'm meant to die here, then let it be quick. But if there's a reason for me to live, show me. Please, show me. The humming grew louder, and then they came. I don't know what disturbed them. Maybe it was the heat reaching its peak. Maybe it was my movements. Maybe it was something else entirely. But they emerged from the wells in a cloud so thick it looked like black smoke rising from the ground. Thousands of bees, their buzzing so loud it felt like the air itself was vibrating. I closed my eyes and waited to die. But the pain never came. I felt them land on my skin, on my arms, my face, my hair. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Their tiny feet tickled as they crawled across me. I could feel their wings beating against my cheeks. But they didn't sting. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid that any movement would trigger the attack. But what I saw made no sense. The bees were covering me completely, like a living blanket. But they were calm, almost protective. And then I heard it. Not with my ears, but somehow deeper. A sound that was also a feeling, a sensation I can't properly describe even now. It was like the bees were speaking to me. I know how that sounds. Insane, right? The sun, the dehydration, the trauma. I must have been hallucinating. But what happened next, I can't explain away. The bees began to organize themselves. Some flew to the water bottle my family had left, and somehow, impossibly, began carrying drops of water back to my mouth. Others settled on my head and body, their wings fanning me, cooling me in the brutal heat. And I felt connected to them, like I could sense their thoughts, their collective consciousness. They weren't just insects, they were intelligent, aware, and they had chosen to protect me. I stayed like that for 3 days. During that time, the bees brought me water, shaded me from the sun, and at night, covered me to keep me warm when the desert cold set in. I should have died. Every medical expert would tell you it's impossible to survive those conditions. But I did survive. And on the 3rd day, everything changed. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke to find the chains had corroded. The metal had weakened somehow, turned brittle. When I pulled, they snapped like dried twigs. The bees swirled around me in a spiral pattern, and I felt them guiding me. I walked, following their lead, and they brought me to an old stone structure I hadn't noticed before, partially buried in sand. Inside, protected from the elements, was a spring. Fresh water, cold and pure. I drank until I thought I would burst, washed my face and wounds. The bees watched, humming their strange song. That's when I saw the carvings on the walls. Ancient Arabic script, so old I could barely read it, but I understood enough. It spoke of a covenant, an ancient agreement between the desert people and the bees. Those who were innocent, who had been wronged, could find protection in the swarms. The bees were guardians of the betrayed, servants of a justice older than human law. I realized then that this place was sacred. My family had chosen it to punish me, not knowing they had sent me to exactly where I needed to be. The bees guided me out of the desert. It took 2 days of walking, but they showed me the way, always leading me toward water, toward shade during the hottest hours. And when we reached the edge of the desert, near a small village, they finally left me. The swarm rose into the air, circled me 3 times, and then flew back toward the desert. But I knew I would never be alone again. I could still feel them, somewhere in my mind, a connection that hadn't been severed. I won't tell you exactly where I am now. My family still looks for me, and I've learned that safety requires secrecy. But I can tell you that I'm free. I never married Abdullah. I never returned to that golden cage. Instead, I've spent the last 3 years helping other women escape situations like mine. I work with organizations that provide safe houses, legal support, and new identities for women fleeing forced marriages and abuse. The bees saved my life, but I chose what to do with that life afterward. Sometimes, when I'm in a garden or pass by flowers, bees come to me. They land on my hand gently, circle around me, and I swear they remember. I swear they know. Scientists would tell you that's impossible, that bees don't have that kind of memory or consciousness. But I know what I experienced. I know what I felt. My brother Rashid reached out to me once, through an encrypted message. He said he regretted what he did, that he thinks about me every day. I never responded. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. But I don't hate him. I don't hate any of them anymore. Hate is just another kind of chain, and I've worn enough chains for one lifetime. People ask me if I'm angry at my family, if I want revenge. The answer is no. I want something better than revenge. I want other women to be free. I want to break the system that made my family think they had the right to kill me for wanting to choose my own life. That's why I'm sharing this story now, because somewhere, there's a girl like I was, trapped in a golden cage, dreaming of freedom, but too afraid to reach for it. If you're that girl, I want you to know. You deserve freedom. You deserve to choose your own path. And if you reach for it, if you take that risk, you might be surprised by what rises up to help you. Maybe it won't be bees. Maybe it will be a friend, a stranger, an opportunity you never expected. But if you're brave enough to try, if you're willing to walk into your own desert, you might find that you're not as alone as you think. My name is Princess Sabrina, and I survived the impossible. This is my story.